Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Alpha Art Gallery's Meet the Artist series. My name is Ibel Shum, a curatorial intern at Alpha Art Gallery, and I'm here with Lisa Marseglia-Moran, who's an exhibiting artist for the New Brunswick Art Salon Oil and Mixed Media exhibition. Lisa Moran here is a distinguished artist and educator with a BFA from Boston College and also has a teaching certification from William Patterson College. She also had a 30-year art teaching career in New Jersey, but after retiring in 2021, she has dedicated herself to creating unique mixed media weavings and gained recognition and awards for her work in the New Jersey/New York area. So thank you so much for coming today, Lisa. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. So yeah, let's get started with the interview. So what specific moment or realization led you to make the transition from being an art educator to a full-time artist after 30 years in Paramus, New Jersey?
To be honest, I think I was always an artist my whole life. It was never one or the other. And making the transition was just because I could. I was just ready to do it full time. I loved teaching during the pandemic. I know that sounds crazy, but I really did. But I had also so much time during the pandemic to create art. And I realized that when it was over and we were going back to our normal life, I didn't want to give up the amount of time that I had. And since I was able to do it, I just decided this was the time.
Mm. Ooh, how do you feel about teaching art online versus in person then? I assume you taught art online, yeah, during the pandemic.
So I taught preschool,
Mm-hmm.
elementary school, and then I taught adults on the spectrum.
Mm.
And in the beginning, I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't even know what a Google Classroom was. So I'm not going to lie, I was terrified in the beginning. But once we got going, what I loved about it was it opened up a whole new area to be creative. Because
Mhm.
after the first couple of days of school, when I had first packed up supplies for all of my kids, I had about 400 students and I packed up supplies to send home for them. Half of them lost them by the end of the first week, and then they ran out of things. So we had to get really creative about what was in their houses.
Mhm.
And that was the part that I loved. I had each child get a bag, and all throughout the week, they would find things that they could make art out of, and they would come in the next week and share what they found. So it would be things like, I found the inside of the gum wrapper that was silver, and I'm going to use it to make ice for my snowman. Or I found the cupcake wrapper that was bumpy and colorful. And it just was really fun. We were, painting with tea bags and just that piece we had never had before. And I love any challenge. So that was really fun. And it worked really well for the kids on the spectrum because it actually gave them a quiet space. We'd start together, and then if they wanted to, could go off on their own and then come back and join us. It's never going to replace in person, but there were definitely things that once we leaned into it, it wasn't that bad. And it's the world we're moving into, so it's
Mhm.
good practice.
That sounds really amazing. Wow, being in your classroom sounds super fun. I wish I was a kid then. And
Thank you.
so, so can you share a bit more about your creative process itself and how do you typically approach a new piece?
So I work in a lot of different media, and I'm always inspired by the earth. From the time I first started painting, that has always been my biggest inspiration. The pieces I'm currently working on um, are mixed media, and there's a lot of handmade paper in them. So I was mostly inspired by a bunch of hikes that I took out west in the Pacific Northwest and in the Southwest. And just the beautiful rugged mountains and just the simple shapes and that rhythm of the tree line along the mountains as you're driving to a hike. And I just wanted to capture that feeling of those organic shapes. So I'm using handmade paper. And then at the end of every day, I collect all of my scraps and soak them and remake paper with them again. So I use the new paper in the next piece. And I love that metaphor of the kind of circle of life, that the paper that's left over doesn't get wasted. It becomes part of the next piece. So all the pieces are kind of related to each other.
Wow. Wait, that sounds amazing. That sounds really cool. I can totally see that in your background as well with like all your like mountainy paintings as well.
Yeah, but behind me are oils, a lot of the
Hmm.
oils that, yeah, also inspired a lot by the desert Southwest and just rhythmic shapes and energy.
Yeah, specifically see that on the one on the right. That's like the little rhythmic lines and the clouds. So,
The
mhm. I also know that you have some portraits. So how do you balance the individuality of each portrait while intertwining them to create this cohesive and harmonious image while reflecting the interconnectedness of humanity?
So you're talking about the In Lakesh series?
Yeah.
Okay, so that started, honestly, I'll tell you how that started. I was teaching during the pandemic. I was teaching classes here for students who, after like we were home for a year in New Jersey. And towards the end of the first year, I wanted to offer some of my students an opportunity to come and have small classes in my studio. So I was teaching a life drawing class. And I had done this little drawing just as I was demonstrating for the kids. I had drawn a portrait. And when I was done, I accidentally ripped it in half. And this is what because I've been doing weavings now for decades, and I had never done one with the portrait before. But when I ripped it in half, I was like, oh, I think I'm going to just keep ripping her up. And then I made another piece and wove them together. And it was a bit of a challenge because as I was weaving the pieces through, I had to keep the main characteristics. Like I didn't want to lose the eyes but I wanted them to integrate. So I can't really describe how I did it. It was just a work in progress. As I moved it through, I moved the woven pieces until they looked right. And then I painted on top of it a little bit. And then once I did the first piece, that kind of inspired me to do a bunch of other ones. And the purpose of it being to just show our connection as humanity. I like to integrate different ethnicities and cultures in the pieces. There's a lot going on right now with that, especially here. And I just wanted to make just a happy statement that we are all part of each other. And In Lakesh is a Mayan saying that means I am you, you are me.
And yeah, so I was gonna ask you what inspired you to create this form of weaving and intertwining, but I can see you're inspired by that saying. I'm just curious myself. So when you intertwine those works, do you apply any adhesive to them, or do you just like try to make them as tight as possible and then eventually put a frame on top?
No, there's adhesive. Yeah. So I would start off by the piece that I accidentally ripped. I tore that into strips. Then I made another portrait. And you know how you make a weaving like when you're a kid and you make so it was basically that idea, but I didn't do straight lines. I cut the lines around the features of the second portrait. And then as I wove the first one in, I would move the pieces so that the parts that I wanted to show would show in the right place. And then sometimes I would have to draw a little bit back on top of it, just, in case too much of something was covered. And then I put a mounting agent on the back, like a double tack paper to hold the whole thing together, and then trim it and mount it on a board.
Oh, wow. That's so cool. So yeah, can you elaborate more on the significance of nature in your work and how it continues to inspire and shape your artistic vision?
So I have this memory from when I was in college and I was first starting to explore abstract art because my original, like a lot of artists, I was trained all through high school, very technically, learning all the details of shadow and light and perspective. And then I got to college and I had these amazing professors who just opened up the whole world of abstract and just introduced us to so many different ways of thinking about art. And I remember walking around the reservoir outside of my dorm and just having this feeling that trees were not just green. And I don't mean like in the fall, just the energy was kind of coming out to me in color. So, and I could hear them. And it was the weirdest feeling. Like I started to have this I don't know how to really make this make sense, but it was almost like my senses were crossing, that I could hear trees and I can feel them. And they just weren't green and brown. They just came out and so I started painting that, like the energy of that. And my very favorite painting it's a palm tree that I painted when I went to St. Croix in my senior year in college. And as ridiculous as it sounds, I had never seen a real palm tree before, like a live growing palm tree. And I was so blown away by the energy of this tree. And I just thought it was spinning. And the palm part just struck me as having so much energy. And I went back to school and I painted the energy of this tree. And it's in my house now. It came out it just came out that way, all kinds of colors. And you can sort of tell it's a palm tree if once I tell you that. But I really started to paint the energy as opposed to what the tree looked like, because that's kind of what the tree looked like to me. And that has since evolved into when I paint, I try to paint more the energy that I feel than what something actually looks like.
I definitely feel you. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me because like when I look at your artworks, they're really colorful. They're like pulsing, they're vibrating. You can see the strokes. I can definitely see what you're saying as well. Um, so next question. How do you hope viewers will interpret and connect with your art, particularly in relation to the themes of unity, diversity, and also interconnectedness that resonate throughout your work?
I don't think that art needs to be something that we overthink.
Mm-hmm.
I just want people to have, a lot of the work I'm doing now is small and is simple, and people are reacting to it it's just kind of joyful, just feeling no controversy, just a love of the earth. And, I just really want that, just to feel good about our earth. And I do want people to recognize that we need to protect her. So that's one of the reasons why the paper that I use is handmade and recycled. And I do talk to people about that because I just want us to honor her,
Mm-hmm.
and notice her. One of the things that I've started to notice in my neighborhood is how quickly we cut down trees. And I want my work to just kind of make people recognize that these are living, pulsing creatures that are part of our energy, and we need to cherish them. So I mean that's a big thing to try to get with a couple of pictures, but sort of the big goal in the end.
But that's what art and artists are supposed to do. So I really enjoy like the message you're creating and also like your energy and just all the vibes you're giving, especially with how personal your work is. I really hope that message stand out with like the audiences as well. So one more question. Do you think you'll continue the series of weaving artworks together? If not, where do you see your artistic journey taking you in the future? Are you gonna try more hands-on work, more natural work, using more natural materials? What are your plans and goals in the future?
Well, I work all the time and I'm inspired by all kinds of things. I'm constantly trying new media. My husband likes to say he can't wait to come home to see what completely new thing I've done today.
That's
Right
so
now, I am so in love with making paper and creating these pieces that I hadn't really think about anything else. I'm just making them for the time being. But I can tell you that one of the things I see in my future is pottery.
Mhm.
I love getting my hands in the clay, and I've taken a couple of my kids and my husband all went together to make pottery, and I hadn't done it
Mhm.
since college. And we made a couple of pieces, and all the things in my kitchen are handmade pottery, and I
Oh,
just love that. I love, again, it's the earth, so I'm sure I'm going to start doing more of that in the future too.
mhm. That's exciting to hear. Um, so that concludes it for today, but I will actually like to go into more of your technical details. So how do you usually make your paper?
Oh, paper is so easy to make. And I
Mhm.
don't make it on a big scale because I'm not a paper maker. I'm using the paper for the collages. So you can use a blender, but
Mhm.
I have a NutriBullet, the little NutriBullet. I had the extra canister. I keep it on my desk when I'm done. I collect all the scraps at the end of the day, put them in the canister, soak them overnight. Then
Mhm.
you just blend it into pulp, and then you pour it into a screen, and
Ooh.
the screen is called a decal.
Mhm.
So it's just it. I mean, I've actually done it with a strainer, like a kitchen strainer,
Mhm.
except for that it's curved. And then
Mhm.
you press out the water, put it on the counter, press it down, and then the paper dries a little warped. So I usually iron it when I'm done. But it's a super easy process. Like you could make it at home with no actual art supplies. If you have a blender and a strainer, you can do it at home.
So usually you do that with like a lot of your artworks. Do you ever get sad when you have to like blend your own artworks up, or are you more
No,
like,
these are the scraps.
okay, out of
Like,
scraps?
yeah, so as I'm making pieces, there's always leftover pieces that I'm collecting. And then if it is a piece that I didn't like, I would tear it up and recycle it. But so I
Mhm.
wouldn't, no, I wouldn't be
That's
sad
not,
because
yeah, that's like
she's
I
just
feel
getting
like a
another
good
chance
idea.
to have a.
Because like a lot of art students in art school as well, we have so much scrap paper and I never know what to do with them. So now that's a brilliant idea.
And
Um,
it's so fun too because sometimes I separate the colors a little so that not every piece of paper comes out brown, but
mhm.
there's a little surprise in it, what color you're going to get when you're blending all the pieces together and what the texture is going to be depending on the paper that you're using. So
Wow.
I love that part because I always felt like creating art is a conversation with the piece, that the
Mhm.
piece always has something it wants to say too, especially when I'm painting,
Mhm.
that it has a direction. It's like having a conversation. You
Yeah.
can't totally control it on one side. So
Mhm.
I think that's really fun about making paper is that it comes out a little different every day.
That's amazing to hear. So, thank you so much for being here with us today. We can't wait to see your work at an exhibition titled Color and Texture and Anthologies of Artistry, which will be on view from August 27th to October 19th, 2024. So thank you again and have a great rest of your day. And for
Thank
you
you
all
so much for having me.
watching.